But surely, the higher you place the creative artist, the lower must the critic rank. Why so? Because the best that he can give us will be but an echo of rich music, a dim shadow of clear outlined form. It may indeed be that life is chaos, as you tell me it is, that its martyrdoms are mean and its heroisms ignoble, and that it is the function of literature to create, from the rough material of actual existence, a new world that will be more marvelous, more enduring, and more true than the world that common eyes look upon, and through which common natures seek to realize their perfection. But surely, if this new world has been made by the spirit and touch of a great artist, it will be a thing so complete and perfect that there will be nothing left for the critic to do. I quite understand now, and indeed admit most readily, that it is far more difficult to talk about a thing than to do it, but it seems to me that this sound and sensible maxim, which is really extremely soothing to one's feelings, should be adopted as its motto by every academy of literature all over the world, applies only to the relations that exist between art and life, and not to any relations that there may be between art and criticism. But surely criticism is itself an art, and just as artistic creation implies the working of the critical faculty, and indeed without it cannot be said to exist at all, so criticism is really creative in the highest sense of the word. Criticism is, in fact, both creative and independent. Independent? Yes, independent. Criticism is no more to be judged by any low standard of imitation or resemblance than is the work of poet or sculptor. The critic occupies the same relation to the work of art that he criticizes as the artist does to the visible world of form and color, or the unseen world of passion and of thought. He does not even require for the perfection of his art the finest materials. Anything will serve his purpose, and just as out of the sordid and sentimental amours of the silly wife of a small country doctor in the squalid village of Yonville-l'Abbaye near Rouen, Gustave Flaubert was able to create a classic and make a masterpiece of style, so from the subjects of little or of no importance, such as the pictures in this year's Royal Academy, or in any year's Royal Academy for that matter, Mr. Lewis Morris's poems, Emma Onet's novels, or the plays of Mr. Henry Arthur Jones, the true critic can, if it be his pleasure, so to direct or waste his faculty of contemplation, produce work that will be flawless in beauty and instinct with intellectual subtlety. Why not? Dullness is always an irresistible temptation for brilliancy, and stupidity is the permanent bestia triumphans, triumphant beast, that calls wisdom from its cave. To an artist so creative as the critic, what does subject matter signify? No more and no less than it does to the novelist and the painter. Like them, he can find his motives everywhere. Treatment is the test. There is nothing that is not in it, suggestion or challenge. But is criticism really a creative art? Why should it not be? It works with materials and puts them into a form that is at once new and delightful. What more can one say of poetry? Indeed, I would call criticism a creation within a creation. For just as the great artists, from Homer and Aeschylus down to Shakespeare and Keats, did not go directly to life for their subject matter, but sought for it in myth and legend and ancient tale, so the critic deals with materials that others have, as it were, purified for him, and to which imaginative form and color have already been added. Nay, more, I would say that the highest criticism, being the purest form of personal impression, is in its way more creative than creation. as it has least reference to any standard external to itself, and is in fact its own reason for existing, and as the Greeks would put it, in itself and to itself an end. Certainly it is never trammeled by any shackles of verisimilitude, no ignoble considerations of probability, that cowardly concession to the tedious repetitions of domestic or public life affect it ever. One may appeal from fiction unto fact, but from the soul there is no appeal. From the soul. Yes, from the soul. That is what the highest criticism really is, a record of one's own soul. It is more fascinating than history, as it is concerned simply with oneself. It is more delightful than philosophy, as its subject is concrete and not abstract, real and not vague. It is the only civilized form of autobiography, as it deals not with the events but with the thoughts of one's life, not with life's physical accidents of deed or circumstances, but with the spiritual moods and imaginative passions of the mind. I am always amused at the silly vanity of these writers and artists of our day, who seem to imagine that the primary function of the critic is to chatter about their second-rate work. The best that one can say of most modern creative art is that it is just a little less vulgar than reality, and so the critic, with his fine sense of distinction and sure instinct of delicate refinement, will prefer to look into the silver mirror or through the woven veil, and will turn his eyes away from the chaos and clamor of actual existence through the mirror, though the mirror be tarnished and the veil be torn. His sole aim is to chronicle his own impressions. It is for him that pictures are painted, books written, and marbles hewn into form. I seem to have heard another theory of criticism. Yes, it has been said by one whose gracious memory we all revere, and the music of whose pipe once lured Proserpina from her Sicilian fields, and made those white feet stir, and not in vain become Nore cowslips, that the proper aim of criticism is to see the object as in itself it really is. But this is a very serious error, and takes no cognizance of criticism's most perfect form, which in its essence is purely subjective, and seeks to reveal its own secret and not the secret of another. For the highest criticism deals with art not as expressive, but as impressive purely. But is that really show? Of course not. Who cares whether Mr. Ruskin's views on Turner are sound or not? What does it matter? That mighty and majestic prose of his, so fervid and so fiery colored in its noble eloquence, so rich in its elaborate symphonic music, so sure and certain at its best, is a subtle choice of word and epithet, is at its least a great work of art as any of those wonderful sunsets that bleach or rot on their corrupted canvases in England's gallery. Greater indeed, one is apt to think at times, not merely because its equal beauty is more enduring, but on account of the fuller variety of its appeal. Soul speaking to soul in those long cadenced lines, not through form and color alone, though through these indeed completely and without loss, but with intellectual and emotional utterance, with lofty passion and with loftier thought, with imaginative insight and with poetic aim. Greater, I always think, even as literature, is the greater art. Who, again, cares whether Mr. Pater has put into the portrait of Mona Lisa something that Leonardo never dreamed of? The painter may have been merely the slave of an archaic smile, as some have fancied, but whenever I pass into the cool galleries of the Palace of the Louvre, and stand before that strange figure, set in its marble chair in that cirque of fantastic rocks, as in some faint light under the sea, I murmur to myself, she is older than the rocks among which she sits. Like the vampire, she has been dead many times, and learned the secrets of the grave, and has been a diver in deep seas, and keeps their fallen day about her, and trafficked for strange webs with Eastern merchants, and as Leda was the mother of Helen of Troy, and as Saint Anne, the mother of Mary. And all this has been to her but the sound of lyres and flutes, and lives only in the delicacy with which it has moulded the changing lineaments, and tinged the eyelids and the hands. And I say to my friend, the presence that thus so strangely rose beside the waters is expressive of what in the ways of 1,000 years men had come to desire. And he answers to me, hers is the head upon which all the ends of the world are come, and the eyelids are a little weary. And so the picture becomes more wonderful to us than it really is, and reveals to us a secret of which in truth it knows nothing. And the music of the mystical prose is as sweet in our ears as was that flute player's music that lent to the lips of La Gioconda those subtle and poisonous curves. Do you ask me what Leonardo would have said had anyone told him of his picture, that all the thoughts and experience of the world had etched and molded therein that which they had had of power to refine and make expressive the outward form, the animalism of Greece, the lust of Rome, the reverie of the Middle Age with its spiritual ambition and the imaginative love is the return of the pagan world and the sins of the Borgias? He would probably have answered that he had contemplated none of these things, but had concerned himself simply with certain arrangements of lines and masses, and with new and curious color harmonies of blue and green, and it is for this very reason that the criticism which I have quoted is criticism of the highest kind. It treats the work of art simply as a starting point for new creation. It does not confine itself, let us at least suppose so for the moment, to discovering the real intention of the artist and accepting that as final. And it in this it is right. For the meaning of any beautiful created thing is at least as much in the soul of him who looks at it as it was in the soul who wrought it. Nay, it is rather the beholder who lends to the beautiful thing its myriad meanings, and makes it marvelous for us, and sets it in some new relation to the age, so that it becomes a vital portion of our lives, and a symbol of what we pray for, or perhaps of what, having prayed for, we fear that we may receive. The longer I study, Ernest, the more clearly I see that the beauty of the visible arts is as is the beauty of music, impressive primarily, and that it may be marred, and indeed often is so, by any excess of intellectual intention on the part of the artist. For when the work is finished, it has, as it were, an independent life of its own, and may deliver a message far other than that which was put into its lips to say. Sometimes, when I listen to the overture to Tannhauser, I seem indeed to see that comely knight treading delicately on the flower-strewn grass, and to hear the voice of Venus calling to him from the caverned hill. But at other times it speaks to me of 1,000 different things, of myself, it may be, and my own life, or of the lives of others whom one has loved and grown weary of loving, or of the passions that man has known, or of the passions that man has not known and so has sought for. Tonight it may fill one with that love of the impossible, that amour de l'impossible, which falls like a madness on many who think they live securely and out of reach of harm, so that they sicken suddenly with the poison of unlimited desire, and in the infinite pursuit of what they may not obtain, grow faint and swoon or stumble. Tomorrow, like the music of which Aristotle and Plato tell us, the noble Dorian music of the Greek, it may perform the office of a physician, and give us an anodyne against pain, and heal the spirit that is wounded, and bring the soul into harmony with all the right things. And what is true about music is true about all the arts. Beauty has as many meanings as man has moods. Beauty is a symbol of symbols. Beauty reveals everything because it expresses nothing. When it shows us itself, it shows us the whole fiery colored world.